Tonight, they haven't even settled on what the job will be, but already European leaders heading for this week's summit are engaged in horse trading over the new presidency.
The Conservatives say that appointing Tony Blair as EU president would be a hostile act. Many European socialists aren't very keen on it either. But could it just happen?
Also tonight, the row that's gone all the way to the UK Supreme Court over faith schools in England and Wales.
The law in the ruling is essentially suggesting, certainly from a Jewish perspective, that God is a racist, and that doesn't wash.
The new UK Supreme Court opened for business on October the 1st, and tomorrow it will hear a very challenging case. It will consider this question: who counts as Jewish for the purpose of admission to a Jewish faith school in England and Wales? There are no criteria for admission to faith schools in Scotland. The case has deeply divided Britain's Jewish community, and the government believes it may have wide ramifications for other faith schools. Here's Tim Hugh.
Bringing up a new generation of Hebrew-speaking Scousers isn't easy. Liverpool has fewer and fewer Jews. The state funds a highly successful Jewish school in the city, and until now, it's cast its net wide. All you needed to get in on a Jewish ticket was a Jewish mother, regardless of whether your family observed the faith. But not anymore. Suddenly, a court has said that that's not legal, here or at any other Jewish school. The result is outrage.
Jewish people have been around for 5,770 years now, and we have always defined being Jewish through your mother. So if your mother is Jewish, then you are Jewish. It's a total breach of human rights. You cannot come in and start telling people how that their whole lives should change, that the whole essence of their life and their religion is completely wrong and they've got to be doing it differently.
Now, in another part of the country, Britain's largest Jewish school is asking the new Supreme Court to overturn a ruling that many in the community think strikes at the very basis of their faith.
At the centre of the row is this huge comprehensive in North London, the JFS, or Jewish Free School. JFS refused admission to one boy on the grounds that the chief rabbi didn't recognise his mother as Jewish because she'd undergone a non-Orthodox conversion. But this summer, the Court of Appeal said that that amounted to racial discrimination.
Well, we did ask the Department for Children, Schools and Families to come on and discuss this topic, but they've told us they can't comment on an ongoing court case. I'm joined now by Benjamin Perl, the chairman of the Huntington Foundation and who's established over 20 of the Jewish state schools in England and Wales, and Andrew Copson, the Director of Education for the British Humanist Association. Good evening. Benjamin Perl, why is it so important to overturn this decision?
It is extremely important because our schools ensure our future as a community. From time immemorial, it was always the Jewish school that ensured our survival. We must be very careful not to do anything to jeopardize that position.
But you can go to a Jewish school simply because your mother is Jewish. You may not observe, you may not even care about religion, but as long as your mother is Jewish, you can go to a Jewish faith school.
The less you observe, the more we are interested to teach you of your background and your religion. So it doesn't make a difference. As long as you're Jewish, we are very welcoming and we are very interested to have you as our pupil.
Andrew Copson, and if it is overturned by the UK Supreme Court?
Well, I think it would be a dangerous message to send out. I mean, the whole case has illustrated the essential divisiveness of faith schools being allowed to discriminate per se. There was a parent here who thought she was Jewish, whose Jewishness was an important part of her identity, and yet she was told by the school that she wasn't, and the state supported that discrimination, was a party to it through the funding that it provides to faith schools. I think that if the judgment were overturned, that would be a very negative thing. But you heard their dissenting voices in Tim Hugh's film there that simply by bloodline should not be, as the liberal Jewish rabbi said. It's more than that now, particularly in the 21st century.
In the case of this particular case, the school involved is a JFS school which is under the auspices of the Office of the Chief Rabbi. The British Chief Rabbi is accepted worldwide as the final authority on the issue of who is a Jew. If you want to join that school, you obviously have to follow the rules of the school. According to the Office of the Chief Rabbi, that particular child wasn't exactly acceptable.
So, should there be open access to faith schools, Andrew Copson?
Well, we certainly believe so, yes. I mean, faith schools are entirely state-funded in the main. 60 years ago, religious groups provided a lot of funding for their state-funded schools. It was a genuine partnership, and so they retained certain control over admissions. But these days, 100% of the running costs are paid by the state, and so there's absolutely no reason why what is essentially a public service should be denied to any children, whatever their beliefs and whatever the beliefs of their parents.
But essentially, if the appeal court decision is upheld, faith providers won't be able to decide who goes to their schools.
Yes, the question is much more than a simple yes and no. We are facing an enormous position of crisis in the UK. The question is, are we going to be driven by drugs or ethics? Are we going to be driven by knives or morals? Are we going to be driven by violence or values? All faith schools in the country are the best schools in the country. 15 out of 25 top schools are faith schools.
But 15% of children may go in secondary schools to faith schools, but only 6% go to a form of worship. Isn't that the most extraordinary hypocrisy? That actually people go to faith schools simply because they believe it's better education, nothing to do with religion.
The faith schools are not only better in education, but they are also better in moral values, and the country is interested to instill moral values in our children.
Andrew Copson, it is true, isn't it, that many parents would rather their children went to faith schools than other schools because of discipline and moral values?
There's absolutely no evidence that faith schools are any different from community schools in creating those sort of values. In fact, you could argue that a mixed school that was required to build a community of people from different backgrounds would create a better ethos in the long term. There's also no evidence that faith schools per se are responsible for the improved academic result of pupils that go to them. In fact, the value added between community and faith schools is often shown to be minimal. It's actually more that faith schools attract higher socioeconomic backgrounds of parents, the sort of parents especially who'll pretend to go to church, pretend to be Christians and go to church in order to let their children in, and that's why there's sometimes higher level attainments.
Benjamin, what will be the implications for other faith schools if this decision?
I'm not very familiar with the rest of the faith school movement. As far as the Jewish faith school is concerned, it is absolutely vital that this decision is overruled. Our schools are ensuring our survival. They have been going, and they have been best schools in the country, and we must make sure that they continue as such.
Andrew.
Well, I think you have to ask yourself why the state should be taking on the role of preserving the religious identity of certain groups with its funds. If religious groups and religious parents want to raise their children in a certain tradition, that's their right. They should, of course, be freely permitted to do so. And they can do it in Sunday schools or synagogue schools. They don't need state assistance in order to do it.
But Benjamin Perl, do you think that actually you like an observance test for all faith schools?
No. Anyone who declares in the non-Jewish faith schools that he would like to attend one of those schools, provided that the owners of that school, the church of the school, agree that it is acceptable, yes. But in the case of the Jewish schools, the state doesn't preserve our schools. We supply full academic tuition.
They provide the money.
They provide the money for the national curriculum. The religious status of the school is supported by the parents in after hours.
Thank you both very much. George Osborne put down a fresh political marker today that if he becomes Chancellor, he'll be getting tough on budget deficits and tough on the causes of budget deficits. And he went on to place the Tory party firmly on the side of the public when it comes to the issue of guaranteeing to enrage the voters that of bankers' bonuses. Well, that's all for Newsnight tonight. I'll be back tomorrow. We leave you with pictures from Australia's Global Green Challenge, which got underway this weekend. It's a race featuring solar and hybrid cars and takes in nearly 2,000 miles of some of the country's harshest terrain. They should cross the finish line later this week. Fingers crossed. Good night.